Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is African American youth, some of the problems and some of the challenges faced by African American youth. And we're fortunate to have with us this morning to talk about some of the challenges facing African American youth today, Dr. E. Kelly Sanford from Tennessee State University. Dr. Sanford, let me welcome you to the show and to tell you how delighted we are to have you here. And I'm almost sure that some of my viewers can recall having seen you on this particular show on a number of occasions since over the last few years.
Absolutely.
And so, again, we're simply delighted to have you back with us and to deal with the topic that we want to deal with this morning, some of the challenges faced by African American youth. You've talked about African American youth in terms of institutional racism. You've given us a lot of information about the health and well-being of African American youth. And so we thought that it might be appropriate now to call you back and to have you to deal with that kind of information for our audience this morning. But before we get into that, Dr. Sanford, let's have you to give us some information about E. Kelly Sanford, your background and some of the information, and then we'll get into the topic for the morning.
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me on. I am Dr. E. Kelly Sanford. I'm a professor of sociology at Tennessee State University. I did my postdoc degree at Penn State University in State College, Pennsylvania. Did my PhD at Howard University in Washington, D.C., my undergraduate at UNC and North Carolina Central University in Durham and Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I'm originally from Oxford, North Carolina. All my degrees were in the social science, sociology area. Had an opportunity to do a small time at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan, and I was very proud of that as an opportunity as well, looking at social problems and issues that impacted urban and rural areas throughout the United States and abroad.
You know, and of course, one of the challenges, and I think since you mentioned the urban area and et cetera, I think one of the challenges that youth face today has to deal with the urban area in a real sense. And as a matter of fact, it sort of recalls some of the things that both of us are familiar with during the 1960s and et cetera, and et cetera. But let's look at some of the challenges. I think we've got about 2 minutes before this first segment ends for the day. Let's look at some of the challenges, Dr. Sanford, in terms of the African American youth today, which is to say that we understand that this is not the only group that we're concerned with, but this is a major problem in American society today. So what are some of the challenges that you see in reference to this group today?
Absolutely, it's a great challenge. As a matter of fact, here we are in 2014 on the brink of celebrating President Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty. So that challenge was there during that time, and as you just mentioned, it was really for the majority group. He himself, as president, grew up in a very poor, restricted and depressed area. So he had a conscience and a concern about that. As we fast forward 50 years later, we still have those same challenges with poverty, distressed areas, particularly now in urban areas and in rural areas throughout the United States. It disproportionately has affected African Americans and other minority youth. And I think it's a very important topic to talk about, because when you place it into the historical context of it, some of the same issues that were related 50 years ago are still very present today. And I'm hoping as we go through this morning that we'd have an opportunity to talk about some of those characteristics that are very much related to the disproportionate amount of problems that still exist within the African American community, particularly African American youth.
And especially African American youth that are growing up. You see, as a matter of fact, some of the problems in terms of maturity and coming of age and et cetera, some of these young people are having some real problems in terms of doing that. And I think that the information that you can give us this morning will at least lay a foundation for some of the things that ought to be done. I think that, as you've indicated, back in the 1960s, we were both familiar with the war on poverty, as it was called. But now I think that it's time to go into another war on poverty. And I don't think that that's saying that after all of these years that the war on poverty has been a failure. And I know it has not been a failure from my own personal point of view,
Yes.
because I was also a part of those who were assisted
Yes.
during the so-called war on poverty,
Yes.
when they started the Job Corps program. And that was a program that in a real sense lifted me up
Yes.
and carried me far away. And so those individuals who might argue today that the war on poverty was a failure, the only thing I can say is to look at Dr. Sanford
That's right.
and look at Dr. James Haney
You're right.
and some of the others who were assisted in a real sense dealing with the war on poverty. And so
Absolutely.
that's why we wanted to, in a real sense, to demonstrate the importance of that earlier war on poverty and what we need to do now. And we're going to pick up at that point following this very, very short commercial break. And we'll be back with our audience following this short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. E. Kelly Sanford from Tennessee State University, and a sociologist who has given us considerable information dealing with some of the problems faced by African American youth today. As a matter of fact, Dr. Sanford, you will recall that we call this the challenges facing African American youth. And what I'd like for you to do is to sort of look at it from your perspective and talk about the economic, social, political kind of things that you think that our audience ought to be aware of this morning.
Yes, and as we made reference to a few minutes ago of the war on poverty with President Johnson, presently our President Barack Obama still saw this as a very significant problem here in the United States. He calls it the promise zones, where he targeted 20 different locations and specifically going into 5 now to try to do something about this. These areas that he's looking at is targeting the topic of today, dealing with urbanism here in America, and how in many of those central cities throughout the United States, they really have a disproportionate amount of people that live there, youth in particular, that are experiencing poverty. And when we think about the social stratification system and the economic zone and where they are located, it impacts the family, it impacts the church, it impacts their growth. So we're talking about from the very early ages of birth all the way through adolescence, through young adulthood and entering undergraduate schools. They've been impacted. So you see a disproportionate amount of educational growth that is poor. You find high crime in those areas. And so it's still a problem that we have today as we had many, many years ago. And when we think in terms of this, we're thinking in terms of 50 years ago and maybe make a comparison now and how problems still exist. But I'd like to try to share a model of looking at that 244 years of enslavement and how some of the institutions were created within our culture here in America that has still persisted over that long period of time. And although we still have a lot of remnants of improvement, I think even our president, as he has those 5 promise zones, recognizes there's still a lot of economic impoverishment here in America. And as a result of slavery to now, there are a lot of people that are still first generation going into undergraduate school. You still have large numbers of people who are disproportionately in prison without fathers. And even as President Johnson said, he came out of poverty. I think President Obama would be the first to say he grew up with a single parent. So he has a sensitivity to those needs, and he understands that others that live in those situations are having desperate problems. And out of that, he's suggesting that if there's anyone that wants to work hard and do well, that they should have an opportunity to do it, thinking in terms of the American dream.
That's it.
And in these 5 zones, he's certainly trying to indicate that if people can come up with ideas about how to reduce poverty, how to reduce this problem we're thinking with urban youth within the African American community, as well as other ethnic groups, as well as the majority group, that the government will be willing to support them in doing it. But yes, Dr. Haney, it's a grave problem that still exists, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. Right here in the state of Tennessee, right here in North Nashville, there are just problems that are very much connected to poverty, that's very much connected to the remnants of those things and breaking up families, not having people at home after school, latchkey kids, not having the right type of nourishment for children to be socialized in an environment where they can prosper. But given a change in that, I think there can be a great improvement. So I think this is a stimulus to doing it. And I love your ending of your last segment by saying this, for those that doubt that the war on poverty was a failure, that it would have been worse if it had not have had that insight from that particular president coming out of John Kennedy's era to do something about the issues in America. And this just shows us how statistically we are still in very dire need of help for poverty issues and how they are related to a lot of the social issues and concerns of the African American community and other communities.
And so in a real sense, would you say that it's cost effective to produce? You know, we always argue about the government involvement and whether or not how the government is spending its money and et cetera. Would you say that from an economic point of view that it would be cost effective to produce such programs as the Job Corps program for the longest, as CETA and some of the other programs? Would you say that these programs lift people up out of poverty to such an extent that they are made taxpayers, law-abiding citizens, and et cetera, that it seems to me it would be cost-effective for the government to become involved in this kind of activity? What would you say in reference to that?
Yeah, I would agree 100% on that. And it's interesting because I do know the counter-argument that people are looking at these things as set aside. They want to take them away. Even with the arguments today on reducing the budgets, the first thing they want to do is to take away Head Start and core programs or anything that help those. But if you take those away, it's going to cause higher crime rate, higher every other ill that you have in society. When you look educationally, we are the most richest country in the world, but our citizens, meaning children and youth, are very low on education. Why? Because of poverty. So yes, if they had those programs, if they funded them, and as President Obama has said, any ideas that can be encouraged and developed that would help that issue, that they should be very much excited about doing it because it's going to certainly help people versus hurting people in the long run.
And so these are what you call prosperity zones.
And that's right. They call them the promise zones.
Promise zones.
Promise zones, yes.
And they've got them set up all across, the idea is to set them up all across the nation. And
that's correct. And for anybody that got brilliant ideas, there could be institutions of higher education, institutions of religions, nonprofit organizations that might be able to develop ideas about how to solve that problem. And if they're a good one and they're working, they can do evaluations to show that they're effective. They said they should be funded and to help people. And both of us are professors, and all of us, we can probably look back on and have that student that would not have gone into engineering but was in Head Start. Someone saw that talent, they nourished it. He probably went back to the community without parents that had ever had that educational experience. But that program was very intervening in that person's life. Finished Tennessee State University, now they're prospering and doing very well as a good citizen of the United States.
And that's all over, that's in general, not only
right.
African American, Hispanics, majority groups, and all of these groups have been able to succeed because of the government being willing to take a chance on them in a real sense. Is that what we're saying?
That is exactly what we're saying.
It's cost effective. I mean,
it's very
it cuts down on the incarceration and all of those things that are generally. So I know you're going to talk about that, but it also cuts down on the incarceration and all of those other things that we're spending money on. But if we were willing to put money into these promise zones, that it would, in a real sense, serve as the war on poverty helped many of us back in an earlier period.
That's right.
And of course, we're going to take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. E. Kelly Sanford from Tennessee State University, a sociologist who has given us considerable information in reference to some of the challenges faced by young African American youth. Not in a real sense, Dr. Sanford, limited to African American youth. I think we made that clear that some of the same challenges that are faced by African American youth are simply faced by youth in general who are not well off in the United States of America today. And so let's sort of pick up where we left off.
Okay, absolutely. And I think very strong, it need to be made perfectly clear that when we think about the 50 years ago when Lyndon B. Johnson had the war on poverty, all of those issues were concerned about the majority group in America. Welfare should be understood without any question was developed for the majority group, meaning European Americans here in America. And many times stereotypes have a tendency to emerge in thinking that when we're thinking about CORE or Head Start or any other type of program that might help impoverished people, media sometimes will go into a low-income, impoverished area, find an African American mother that got 10, 12 children and got another one on the way and think that they want to then have another one so they can get some set aside money. But that is just not the case. In the real sense, these programs were set up for the majority group, but there is still, as we said at the very outset, a disproportionate amount of minority groups, African Americans in particular, that are disproportionate in reference to the percentages, and therefore it's in need. And when we can have these types of programs within the communities, it can be a positive. When we think economically, as we talked in the last segment about cost benefit, the amount of cost that may be given, you have a larger benefit from it in our community and helping out versus people end up in prison where you're having to spend a tremendous amount, maybe $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 per inmate every year that they're in there. So we can put it in the positive way on the front end. We can certainly have good outcomes of African American youth and other people throughout the United States. Because one of the analysis that has been done, even during the time of Lyndon B. Johnson, you can go back to that same area that was so impoverished then, and if you come today and go back to that same area and talk to a person, if they did not have a program, they will be in the same situation that they were during that earlier time of the war on poverty. So I want to state that as an issue, as a problem that we still have here in America, in the richest nation in the world. And so we definitely need those types of programs to help African American youth. It is indeed disproportionate in that area as well as other youth. And that's why you see these promise zones that President Obama, who's sensitive to these, saying that if a family or a child want to try to progress and do well, that they should have that opportunity to. And that's what these particular helping aids would do for youth in America.
You know, Dr. Sanford, one of the things that we've always been concerned with is political participation. And I think that in a real sense, there have been many efforts in order to diminish minority political participation in this country. But what are some of the things that you would say in reference, since we're coming up to Dr. King's holiday and that kind of information, what would you say in reference to young people, especially understanding the importance of political participation, and how would you encourage them to become involved in the political process, regardless of what party or what group that they wish to participate with, that as long as they understand that it's important in terms of their own lives and participating in politics. Speak to that for during the next few minutes.
And this is a very important question that you raised, because all of this generated, as we start off by talking about the government help. And so here you are with younger people that make up a significant portion of our population that need to be a part of that process. Education, I think, is that key to that. One has to be very well aware and educated as to the social ills of the past and how they unfolded to the present, so that they will have this at least intellectual idea about why there is a need to have certain things today. That's why you have some of the right-wing conservative, Rush Limbaugh and many others that can say things and people feel that they are correct in their assessment because they are unaware of the history. That's why I laid out that paradigm earlier of hundreds of years of enslavement that led through Jim Crow, and Michelle Alexander has a book, who's a lawyer, entitled The New Jim Crow, that is existing right now. So when people are aware of that history, then they can understand why there is a need to do it today. And you have a lot of problems going on in the politics and voting now. People trying to redirect certain zones within certain districts so that when people do go out to vote, they know they will lose the percentage of their vote and they will not win that particular precinct. And so younger people need to be aware of this and need to be conscious. And I think through our educational process, and I would hope within the African American community, since it's on African American youth, our churches will become rejuvenated and understand some of the issues that you're bringing up on your program, like we're talking about today, and be encouraging for their youth. And then from there, they be very active. I think education is at the key.
And it's important for them to register in order to become involved in politics and to understand that without a vote, that they really have no voice. And
That's
the greater their voting participation, the greater what their voice in a real sense. Would you agree with that as a proposition?
Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. And I would also like to make one other quick observation that's really linked to poverty and economics and everything, and that is education and how parents need to be very much involved in the educational process of their children. We're at a brink now in our country where many are stating that, well, it's that teacher. Well, what happens at home is very important. So given the programs, you have to be very active in it, but just because you have a computer, and that's not going to make a child learn. You have to spend time with them in that whole learning process. And I hope, given what we are talking about today within African American youth and poverty, we still need that engagement. And many people have been very successful that have lived in poverty, worse than we even know it today, that have come out and been very successful and just worked hard. But you have to go over something over and over again. Parents have to reinforce learning, and if they are doing that, I think we can have some very good outcomes. But that said, there is still a very strong need for programs to help people, because that poverty-stricken situation that you're in brings about and causes a lot of different ills within the society in which we live in. And disproportionate African American youth are involved in that.
And so overall, Dr. Sanford, how would you calculate the future for minorities in this country? I know we've come a long way in terms of slavery and et cetera, and et cetera. But are you optimistic or rather pessimistic in reference to the possibilities of minorities in this country today?
Well, I like to be very optimistic and say if we can get conscious and learn and do our very best, and if we have a president like we have with President Obama that understand the needs for all, and thinking that if those programs can help, that they should, that everyone should have a chance to do it. Equality should be very present there. We have to think in terms of trying to continue to understand and to work on racism and sexism that exists within our society, so opportunities can open up in a fair way. So I am the optimist of that, but we also understand in this cost-benefit analysis of America that the middle class is becoming not as large as it used to be. It's becoming smaller. You're having more at the top that are the very wealthy, less of those that are in the middle class. That brings a larger part of those that are in poverty. And that's where we are right now within this society. And it makes it even much more complex than 50 years ago as we're closing with the Lyndon B. Johnson's war on poverty. Because we're living in a telecommunication society, people will have to have multiple skill sets in order to survive. And if you're not educated, then you won't have it. During that earlier time period, during a service society, moving into a technological age, people had opportunities that were there. Everything has become very narrow to move into that middle class. So skill sets are going to be very important. So there are going to be these needs to help reach out and to help people. If not, they will find a way to do it, and it'll be in crime and delinquency.
Dr. Sanford, let me tell you how delighted we are to have had an opportunity to talk about some of these issues with you today, because I know that you've been committed, and that's one reason we like to have you on, because you are committed and you have a real understanding and a lot of good, excellent information that all of our audience, not only the minorities, but all of our audience can profit from, because we know that this is the United States of America, and no matter how bad the situation is today, it was not as bad as where we started from. So I think that as long as we keep that, and I think you've indicated that, as long as we keep that in mind, then there's nothing that can keep any of us back, any minority group, regardless. And so I want to thank you for giving us that information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Ms. Favors, and you'll give us some information about whoever and et cetera. You have about 2 minutes to deal with that. But by that time, the first segment will be over, and then we'll take a.
Did you do it by check? Just say your name, count to 10.
Jenny Calhoun, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Ms. Rima.
Imani Rama, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And Ms. Favors.
Jacqueline Favors, 1, 2.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the challenges of African American females, and we're fortunate to have 3 African American females with us this morning to talk about some of the challenges that are faced by individuals within their group. And what we'd like to do first is to introduce them, and each will give us some information about their background, education, and some of their experiences. And the first person that will give us that information will be Ms. Calhoun, who will be followed by Ms. Rima and followed by Ms. Favors later on. And so we'll try to do, during this first segment, some information in reference to all of that. And I got your names straight the first time around, ladies. Yes. And so I don't think we should have any problems. I think people ought to know who you are. But let's start with you, Ms. Calhoun, to have you to give us a couple of minutes of information in reference to your background, education, and your experiences. And Ms. Rima and Ms. Favors will do the same, and then we'll end this segment for today, and then we'll start on our second segment and talk about some of the issues that you wish to talk about. Let's start with you.
All right, Dr. Haney, my name is Jenny Calhoun. I am the Executive Director of the Mothers Over Murder program here in Nashville, Tennessee. I attended Michigan State University, and I'm also a lyricist and a budding philanthropist as well.
Very good, and of course you're well prepared in reference to talk about some of the things. And of course you established the program, Mothers, you were involved with that program,
yes.
Mothers Over
Murder.
Mothers Over Murder.
Yes, sir.
And we anticipate some information in reference to you, in reference to how mothers feel in reference to that. Ms. Rima, let's talk about your background, your education, and some of the things that were responsible for bringing you to us this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Haney. My name is Imani Rama, and I'm a native Nashvilleian. By day, I work for the telecommunications industry, and in the evening, I am a spoken word artist around town. I attended Tennessee State University, and I'm excited to talk about some of the things that have affected me in my life as being an African American woman.
Now, when you say you're a spoken word artist around town, what does that mean?
Spoken word generally means poetry in motion or performance poetry. In 2007, I established a company called Soul Food Poetry Cafe so that I can provide a platform for artists to perform poetry, do poetry readings, and I've done a lot of that around town since 2006, 2007.
Very good. And Ms. Favors, what about your background, education, and some information in reference to that, and then we'll be able to perhaps end this segment after.
Okay, well, my name is Jacqueline Favors. I'm from Columbia, Tennessee. I'm a graduate of Fisk University, 2013 graduate. I'm also now attending Tennessee State University in the graduate or the Masters of Public Health program. And I currently work as a research consultant at Meharry Medical College.
Very good. And so we've assembled during this first segment 3 African American females with a lot of information in reference to some of the things that are going on. And I think that all of you have had an opportunity to sort of collaborate in reference to giving us some information. Let's start with you, Ms. Calhoun, by having you to talk about the area. I think you've established a website dealing with mothers over murder. Talk about that and what that really means.
Mothers Over Murder is a program that we are working. It's actually under the Nashville Peacemakers, headed by Clemmy Greenlee, which is a dynamic woman. What the Mothers Over Murder program does is we reach out to the community and we really try and stop the violence that's going on and try and spread more love. A couple different programs. We have our Little Reading Stars program where we get the children in the low economic to low to moderate income areas. We allow them to come in, we teach them how to read. We also provide a safe haven for mothers who have had their children murdered to come in. We sit in a circle, we all talk, and we really try and help each other heal and move to the next level.
In dealing with mothers involved with this kind of organization, do you find that there are a large number of mothers that are involved? What about relatives and other individuals? Where do you get your catchment area from in terms of bringing individuals into this?
Actually, we have a large amount of mothers involved, but we have some fathers too. So, I mean, it's kind of weird that we call it Mothers Over Murder when we have some dynamic fathers who are involved, who are out on the streets with us picketing, who are writing the congressmen here. I mean, we have some fathers that are involved as well. And it's really a family organization because the children that we take out and that we reach out, we're using the children. Some of them are the children of the murdered person, like, because one of our ladies, her grandson is a part of the program, and what we do is we take him out, and because she takes care of him full time, and
Very good. Of course, we want to take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Ms. Calhoun, Ms. Rayma, and Ms. Favors, three African-American females giving us some information relative to what we consider to be the challenges faced by African-American females in the 21st century. Ms. Calhoun has already given us some excellent information dealing with mothers over murder. And Ms. Rayma has now decided to give us some information, Ms. Rayma, if you will, some information in reference to the spoken word and some of the ways that the things that you're doing might fit into some of the things that Ms. Calhoun has talked about.
Well, actually, the genre of spoken word is very, very vast, and a lot of the spoken word artists around Nashville talk about so many different topics, and there's so much to do with from almost every artist that I talked to and heard from during the Trayvon Martin incident. Everybody had something very powerful and prolific to talk about where that's concerned. So the spoken word community is full of activists, full of people who are political, who are intelligent, who really want to share from their hearts and their experiences the things we face and the challenges that we have in our lives. And for me, one of the main things that I'm dealing with right now is the choices that I've made to travel down a journey to be healthy and fit. I'm over 40. By this time, our ways have set in, the things that our perspective of the realm of who we are and what we do with our lives, we've already settled into the whole I'm set in my ways thing. And so a lot of things, the way I was living my life, did not promote healthy lifestyle. And I just made the decision a few months ago to really focus on what I'm eating, being more active, making sure that in my family we're eating healthy foods and I'm making better choices. I'm moving, joined the gym. You know, I didn't wait until the first of the year and had a big resolution, but several months ago I decided I wanted to do different and be different. And,
you made a personal commitment to yourself in a real sense to try to, and you're living up to that and keeping with that. Go on, speak on it.
Absolutely. And what I've done is I'm really not on a diet per se, but just a long-term lifestyle change from the heart. The things I had to do is recognize the things within my personality, within my nature that were causing me to not be the way I need to be, whether it's being complacent, not being focused, focusing on other things is something that as an African-American woman, I have a family, my family comes first, my job comes first, all those things, and oftentimes we put ourselves last and our health last. So I made a commitment not to put myself first, because God is first, but to make sure that I make the changes necessary and have the lifestyle necessary so that I can have a long and prosperous life.
And so in a real sense, the caregiver in you not only wishes to give care to others, as most African-American females do have to do, also recognize that you need care yourself, and that if there's a responsibility, first of all, you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of somebody else.
That's right. And that's the part that we forget sometimes. So I've just made a commitment to eat right. And what I mean by eating right is just pushing back from the table, using less fat products, eating more fruits and vegetables every day, you know, making sure that I include exercise 4 or 5 days a week, just doing those things, and my body's starting to change, my mindset is changing. During this whole outbreak of the flu, most people in my family got sick, I did not, and I think it's because of I attribute it to the healthy lifestyle changes that I've made. Very
good. Ms. Favors, I think you could buy into that in terms of the health and the outcomes of it. Speak to that, Ms. Favors, in terms of...
Well, definitely, along with what Ms. Raymer was saying, health is key to living a perfect lifestyle. Oftentimes we talk about stress and we talk about getting sick and not being able to do what we want to do. If you're sick, you're not going to be able to work as efficiently as you would have. You're not going to be able to go to school and succeed as well as you would have. So I think that health is definitely number one, making sure that you take care of your body, eating right, and getting exercise. And that's a big thing that we in America need to be taking a dose of health and fitness, definitely.
You know, I think that this also brings up the fact of the Affordable Health Care Act. What are you doing in a real sense, Ms. Raymer, in terms of encouraging other young folks especially to become involved in trying to watch over their own health by perhaps becoming involved in the Affordable Care Act. Do you find that there's a need for such an act in our society?
Absolutely, there's a need. And just depending on where you are in corporate America and what type of benefits you have at your job, and then, you know, it's up to us to really go after what we need. A lot of other countries, health care is provided. Health care is a part of what the government provides, but in the United States, that's what we have to do. We have to go after our own health on our own. And what I like to do is motivate others and encourage others. I have a website, it's ImaniRaymafitness.com, that I just started actually a couple of weeks ago. And on there I really talk about issues that we face, just wanting to just to provide a way to inspire people, and I share other people's stories, how they changed their diet, and different things like that, and how to motivate people to really focus on their health.
Ms. Faber, the last 2 minutes that we have in this segment, why don't you give us some information in reference to body images? I mean, how does that fit into what Ms. Rayma has said in reference to some of the things?
Well, along with body image, trying to look the part, I think that African American women often struggle and feel kind of pressured going out into corporate America, trying to get the job or to move up to a different position in corporate America. It is often that we have to take a look at ourselves and wonder, will I be accepted? And so I feel like oftentimes we look at our body image. Is my chest too big? Is my bottom size too big? Does my hair look okay? And we are kind of pressured to say if we will be accepted into the job. Did I not get the job because my hair looks like this? Should I change my hair? Do I need to go and, fire my hair? So a lot of that actually ties in wanting to be successful in corporate America.
And you would suggest that's not the best way to try to, you have to present yourself as you are and be
Yes.
be happy with who you are.
Yes.
I think that's essentially the same thing that, excuse me, the three of you are saying,
Yes.
in a real sense, that you have to love yourself
That's
before
right.
you can love anybody else. And if you
Yes,
don't love
that's
yourself, then
important.
you're going to have all the problems that you're going to have the problems with crime and murder and
Yes.
killing folks and
Yes.
getting killed, and you're going to have the same problems in terms of your health and et cetera. So what we have to do is to really not in a conceited kind of situation, but be as concerned with our own health as we are with health for everybody else. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And of course we'll get involved coming up. This upcoming segment, we've got about 10 minutes that will give you an opportunity to talk about other things. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Ms. Favors, Ms. Rayma, and Ms. Calhoun in reference to the situation of African American females at the 21st century. And I want you ladies to know how appreciative we are for the information that you've given us. But let's take this last segment, Ms. Favors, to have each of you to give us some information about a topic that you consider to be one of the most important topics dealing with African American females today, and et cetera, and then we'll be able to shut out this show during the last
Okay, well, upon talking about body image, I feel like the most important thing and a very popular topic right now among African American women is hair. And along with body image, hair is a big thing. It's oftentimes the first thing that people look at and notice when they meet you. So along with being yourself, I think that it is important to just be yourself. If you feel like wearing that weave, wear it. If you feel like being natural, be natural. You know, and I think in my personal experience, I've had, I went to a job interview. I'm from a small town. And so, of course, there weren't many people who look like me in a place where I went to have my job interview. And so after I had the job interview, well, when I had it, I felt like I did perfect. I had my resume perfect, I had researched the job, and I answered all the questions, and I felt like when I did my follow-up, the reason why I didn't get the job is because of my hair. And that ended up in me having a personal, not meltdown, but downfall of me not being comfortable with what I look like. And so now I'm going back and looking at myself and my body image. I feel like, you know, if companies do claim that they want diversity and, you know, to increase their diverse customer base, why not be myself? Be as diverse as I can be. Don't try to fit in and be of some specific prototype. Be myself, because no one has to offer what I have to offer.
That's right.
And I think this is what we meant, that you have to love yourself, and
Right.
and the things that you feel that is best for you, then you have to do it, regardless of how other folks might think in reference to it. And I can certainly appreciate that. Ms. Rima, what do you have to say in reference to some of the information that you would like to leave with us this morning?
Well, Ms. Favors made a good point about hair, and I think something that is really important to us as Black women is, like you said, loving ourselves, and loving ourselves enough to know what the values are that makes us the women that we are. And one of the things that I have conversations with my friends about all the time is just the image, the prototype that has been built around the African American woman. Everybody talks about the whole twerking and the videos and just the way that we present ourselves and the people who get the most attention. In one voice we say, you know, be who you are, and then the other voice says you have to look a certain way. You have to have this type of waistline and all the other attributes that are just physical. And I just want to encourage African American women to look past the physical and to their heart, to their character, and you attract the kind of people who are really attracted to those type of things. Because as we move forward, you know, we have to dispel all of the things that promote the negativity, the reality TV, the different shows that are on that our young people watch. Doesn't promote the positivity in African American women. And as you said earlier, loving yourself comes into play. You know, the moral value, the character, the moral compass is just like going in so many different directions that we've kind of lost. Being the loving, the giving and caring mothers, and being the type of women that we want to be looked up to. You know, who are the grandmothers of today? I'm in my early 40s, and a lot of my friends are already grandmothers, and a lot of 40-year women are still in the club, don't cook. You know, the family values are, you know, just gone haywire. So I just really, you know, want to be that type of woman that brings that back, that brings the spirituality of the household back, that has morals and values and principles. Not that I'm a prude per se, but I just want to make sure that I'm
There are certain standards in which people ought to live by,
right,
and how they ought to judge themselves as well as other folks, and et cetera. You think that?
Exactly. So if we want to be respected and admired and revered for the women that we are, that's what we should project to the world. You know, we've got enough Nene Leakes and, you know, those type of women and what they project in reality TV. Where are the women, the strong backbones, the Madeas, the real Madeas, and the women that, you know, move our families forward? That's the type of woman I want to be. And that's the type of poetry that I share with the people in my community.
There's nothing more important in terms of living than respect. And if you respect another person, people respect people who respect them. And I think that in a real sense, and I can certainly buy into everything that you're saying in reference to that. And I certainly encourage everything that you say. Ms. Calhoun, let's have some statements from you.
Dr. Haney, I really want to talk about the psychological aspect. In order for us to buy into this self-love, we have to first learn to love ourselves and to learn to put the good foods in our body. And I believe that it all hinges on sexual abuse in the African American community. Did you know that 60% of African American women are molested or sexually abused before the age of 18? That is extremely high. And that is what's causing a lot of the psychological issues that we as African American women face. And we don't say anything. It's what happens in this house stays in this house, or this is family business. We don't seek outside counsel. We don't go to therapists. We don't go to psychiatrists. We don't even tell the police because we don't trust in them. The system doesn't work for us as it should. And we don't have any programs that we can go to, like Mothers Over Murder or the Nashville Peacemakers, to be able to talk to them, because these programs aren't getting the funding that they need in order to be of some service to African American women. And no one can speak to African American women like we can, because we are African American women.
Nobody can speak for African American women but African American women.
That's right.
Very good. Now go on.
Right, and so, I mean, for me, I was sexually abused from the age of 11 up until I was 15 by someone really close to me and my family, and it really sought to destroy the very fabric of who God created me to be. And if I didn't seek the help, if my mother wasn't the mother that she is, that allowed me to be able to go and get counseling and to really work through that, I wouldn't be the woman that I am today, and the woman that really God has created me to be. But there are a lot of girls out there. I have cousins who have never told anyone, or who, when they told, no one believed them, or they were ostracized or labeled a liar. I mean, it's horrible, the things that we have to endure, but we're supposed to just grin and bear and keep on moving on. We can't just do that anymore. It's time for a change in our community.
And so you think that what we're trying to do today is important and instructive, you believe, for a large number of African American females, well, not only for African American females, but for all individuals to hear, because
It is, most definitely.
it's not your problem in a real sense. It's problems that other folks have in reference to you that creates the problem for you. And so I think the outpouring of what the three of you are doing now sort of justifies in a real sense what we're trying to accomplish. That is to recognize that we're coming up on what we call Women's History Month and all of those things that women are involved in. But what we need to do is to scope in dealing with some of the issues that has to do with African American females. We've got a couple of a minute and a half left before we finish, Ms. Faber. Have you got a last comment that you'd like to make?
My last comment would be, definitely, if you're an African American woman and you feel pressured to be someone that you're not, be yourself. Don't worry about whether or not you look the part, whether or not you may fit in. As long as you're yourself and you feel good being yourself, you're going to look good as yourself.
Very good. And Ms. Rima?
Well, the one thing that I want to walk away with is your health is first. And we're talking about spiritual health, mental health, physical health, financial health. We need to really delve into making sure that we're all healthy in all the aspects of health in our lives.
And if we just buy into the idea that we need to think in terms of ourselves sometimes, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Finally, last half minute we have here.
If someone is touching you inappropriately, no matter who it is, tell someone, reach out. There are resources for you out in this community, and there are people that really believe in you and really have your best interest at heart. So speak up.
And let me thank the three of you for bringing that excellent information to us. And of course, we want to also thank Ms. Greenlee for helping to organize and bring all of us together here today. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is challenges of African American youth, and we're fortunate to have with us this morning to talk about some of the challenges faced by African American youth today. Members of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, brought to us this morning by Pastor KWalker. And Pastor Walker, let's have you to give us some information, make some statements in reference to your background, education, and some of your experiences, and then introduce the individuals that you have with you this morning, and then we'll give them an opportunity to say something about their background, and then we'll get into this second segment, and then we'll start talking about some of the challenges.
Well, first of all, Dr. Haney, let me say thank you to you again for giving us an opportunity to come on here and talk about some of the issues that we feel like are very necessary to talk about. Your program has always been a forum that gets the information out. It's very informative. So I just want to thank you first and foremost for that. My name is KWalker. I pastor the Hands of God Christian Church. We're located at 600 North 2nd Street out here in East Nashville. I was born and raised here in Nashville. Made an attempt through the public school system to get an education. I was one of the bad guys, and that didn't work out too well, but I ended up going into the Navy, spent a little time in the Navy, got out. Navy, went through OIC, got a GED, went to Tennessee State for a little while, didn't make it there, was strung out on drugs all during that period of time, and ended up incarcerated in the state prison system, and got out of there, continued a life of crime, and then in 1986, God called me into ministry, and I've been doing works of ministry ever since. Got involved with the NAACP a few years ago, met some very, very good people that are here right now with me, and just like to introduce Ms. Sydney Pritchard. She's the president of the NAACP Youth, and Mr. Joe Goldthread, he's the chairperson of the Youth Advisory Council, of which I'm a part of, and I'm delighted to be working with Joe because he's got a history with the NAACP that dates back to his childhood, so I'm delighted and just really excited to be working with him. Ms. Pritchard.
And Ms. Pritchard, why don't you give us some information about yourself, background, education, that kind of information, and then Mr. Goldthread will give us some information, and then we'll end this first segment of the show for today.
Well, I'd like to thank you for letting us on here today. My name is Sydney Pritchard. I'm the president for the Youth Committee and Council for the NAACP. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I go to Hume-Fogg High School. I'm a sophomore, and that's about it for the most part.
Very good. Ms. Goldthread, give us some information. Since she, as a sophomore, really don't have that much of a life, she's telling us. But let's give you an opportunity to take some of her time to tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Joe Goldthread. I graduated from Pearl High School, went to vocational tech out there on White Ridge Road, trades. Trades has been my lifelong success. I lived here in Nashville for all my life. I've been with the NAACP for 55 years. I was a junior NAACP person, and now I am chairperson to bring the youth back to be able to go out and do the things we used to do.
Very good. And so, Pastor Walker, we're saying that the NAACP is still a very, very important organization.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. And what's really impressive to me about the NAACP is the youth part of the NAACP, because everybody knows that, you know, as members of the NAACP, we get older, and it's important that youth are trained up to carry on the work and the mission of the NAACP. And I'm impressed. I was hoping that Sydney would give us a little bit more information about herself, because I'm impressed with her level of intelligence and the knowledge that she do have in terms of leading and guiding this particular aspect of the youth, in terms of raising up the youth and learning the parliamentary procedures and the things that's necessary to guide the youth in the direction that it goes. Because, Dr. Haney, you know that most time when we hear about the youth, we always hear something negative, but there's a positive thing that goes on with our youth that we don't get a lot of media attention. That's why I want to thank you once again for allowing us to come on and to highlight some of the things that the youth are doing positive as we talk about the challenges that the African American youth are facing in the world today.
Ms. Pritchard, why don't you reflect on some of the things that you're doing down at the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and let our audience know how important it is for people like yourself to become involved in the National Association for the Advancement of Color. What are some of the things that you're doing in order to bring that about?
Well, mainly in the recent months, we started a new chapter, the youth chapter, during the summer months, and mainly it's been recruiting, it's been training, it's been making sure that all the youth that are involved in our organization are properly trained and aware of all the things that are going on, whether it's the Trayvon Martin case and or the amendments, the 14th, 15th, and such forth, and also the training is how proper conduct and things such forth, like recently, we had a forum over at the First Amendment Center with Mr. Siegenthaler and